Well, welcome. I'm here with Sydni Joseph, co-founder of Big Plan Holdings, and we're here to talk a little bit more about what she does day to day with her business, who she works with, and tips and tricks for you guys to follow along as well.
Awesome.
Sydni, it's great to have you.
Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So why don't we just jump right into it?
Awesome.
Go ahead and give me a background of like who you are, where you're from, where you're at, what do you do?
Awesome. So high level from the Chicagoland area, born and raised here, went to Stevenson High School and then left for college and went to the University of Kentucky. Went to Lexington for 4 years, loved it, really loved the South, but decided to come back to Chicago because I missed the big city. And so I forever was interested in going into event planning and production, and that was kind of the goal. And just I loved the live event world, a combination of business, fashion, entertainment, music, really everything that live events had to offer. And so most of my professional experience was in the live event space through college. I interned here in Chicago at Kehoe Designs for my summer and winter breaks, got great experience there, and then also worked at our special events office at UK. And then during college, COVID hit. And so when COVID happened, it kind of uprooted a lot of those plans, as it did for most people. Specifically for me in the live event world, there was none of that really happening during the pandemic. And it happened to align with when my dad had sold a company that he was a previous co-founder of. And so we did not ever intend to enter into the family office world. But during the pandemic, him and I got coffee one day when he was visiting me in college. And he was like, hey, you have this dream of going into events, and I love that for you, but right now there's no events. Like, how would you feel about taking your business degree that you got in school and applying all the other things that you've learned through marketing and fashion and hospitality management and starting up a family office, and we'll kind of see where it takes us. And what was once our COVID passion project during quarantine has since evolved into being a family office about 5 years later, and it's still my full-time job as a co-founder of the company. And that's kind of how I got to where I am. And now I split time between here and Nashville, locally to Chicago about 75% of the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. It just kind of evolves from what most people think of being like a downtime in maybe their career or their life.
Yeah.
And you kind of do the opposite to spring that. That's really cool to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, it was very much... my family bores really easily. I also come from a home of very young parents. So my parents, not to out them, but they just turned 50 now. So they're very young.
Okay.
And so during COVID, they had every intention of traveling the world before the pandemic happened, when my dad had sold his company. They were going to travel the world, and my sister and I were off on summer breaks. We were going to go and join them and really kind of like have the youthful adult experience for them. But when COVID hit and obviously everything shut down, my dad is at his core as an entrepreneur and loves to work, and got just hooked back in the working space when kind of everything else was taking a back seat, like you mentioned, during the pandemic. And I have a lot of what he has as it relates to the entrepreneurial spirit and the drive to make really cool connections and really awesome professional strides. And so he kind of asked me to partner up with him and my family. And so, yeah, while a lot of the world was kind of on pause, we were making sizable changes as a family and kind of what that would look like for the next chapter of our lives, which is crazy.
It's super exciting. And not to kind of go off on a different route, but since your dad is more the entrepreneur, do you think that he kind of like steered you in that direction of where you want to go?
Yeah, I think so. He always said that he never liked working for anyone. And he did for a while, up until he went off and started his own real estate company, and then ultimately a cannabis company thereafter, which is the company that he had sold. But he always talked about how being his own boss was like the best thing that he could have done. And I have a lot of respect for that and admiration to kind of follow in that path. I just love the ability to kind of have a seat at the table, have my voice be heard, and be a part of a decision-making process, fail along the way, but know that as the failures are happening, a lot of growth is coming from it. And the more responsibility that you have, the more you learn with every failure, and the greater the successes are when you hit them. And so I think he's definitely an instrumental person to me as it shapes my mindset and path as an entrepreneur moving forward. And I continue to learn a lot from him and my mom as well, who was very entrepreneurial in the process of building this family business. But it's really awesome.
Yeah. No, it's totally awesome. The way that you kind of go through the ups and downs of being a business owner is just something that you tend to learn, and you go through the whole entire way.
Yeah.
And if he kind of learn to love that, and then you start to love that as well, it's just great.
Yeah, it's awesome. I've definitely learned a lot from watching him go through things and watching my mom go through things in the business world, and then also me being able to actually experience them firsthand as well. I feel like I've been such a sponge since I graduated college, just learning every single day, but also sitting in rooms I never could have envisioned, just with a lot of different roles and responsibilities in my job. And so it's been a tremendous ride. A lot of stress doesn't come without great stress, but also has wonderful rewards.
Yeah. So can you walk me through what your day-to-day really looks like with your company? And I'm sure you wear a lot of different hats, but what's a typical day look like for you? Yeah,
so as a co-founder, you do wear a lot of different hats. One day could be doing due diligence for projects all day long. Another day you could be raising capital for an SPV if your family is leading a round in an investment opportunity. Another day you could be heading up creative strategy for your overall holding company or any of your portfolio companies that you've invested in or operate underneath. And some days you do a little bit of all of that. So my day-to-day, I would say, is very different every single day. Some days they're stacked with 8 Zooms. Some days I don't talk to anyone and it's all task-driven. My job has me travel a lot. So because our office is headquartered in Nashville, I'm down there about a week to a week and a half every month. I'm in New York about once a quarter, LA about once a year, London about once a year. So our family office I would say it's a non-traditional family office, very atypical in that it focuses a lot more on alternative asset classes. We kind of have 3 pillars that we focus on. So we have real estate, hospitality, and then venture. And so for me personally, I touch the real estate sector slightly through investor relations and investor write-ups and quarterly reporting and things like that. Hospitality, I definitely touch through our marketing and creative brand strategy sector. And then kind of the venture side is where all of our alternative asset portfolio companies sit. So that's where we tap into professional sports, film, music and entertainment, a little bit of technology, some fashion, some cannabis here and there. And so that sector, our venture side, is kind of where I do a little bit of everything. Sometimes I'm doing creative, sometimes I'm doing diligence, sometimes I'm doing investor relations, and it kind of depends on what project we're working on.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
There's a lot there.
I don't know how you guys keep it together, but...
Neither do I. Organized chaos.
I'm curious, which sector is your favorite?
That's interesting. So I'm a big foodie and hospitality person, and so I would have expected that the hospitality sector would have been my favorite. But operationally, it is so challenging to run a very successful and fruitful hospitality company just with all the operational efficiencies that have to be in place. And given that our 3 bars and restaurants are located in Nashville and I'm here in Chicago most of the time, I thought it would be more of my favorite than it is. I absolutely love it. But actually, in the venture side, the film sector of our venture portfolios has actually been my favorite, which I never would have expected because I'm not a big movie person at all. I actually have very little attention span to sit and watch a full movie, but I have found the film industry to be super interesting, whether it be film financing, like raising capital for individual film projects, the ability to kind of put deals together with record labels, artists, mission-driven causes, and bringing that content to a digestible format that can then be debuted at film festivals or picked up by streaming platforms. And so our partnership with our film company on the portfolio sector is actually where I spend a good chunk of my time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you're able to talk about some of these projects that you've done or you're working on, but could you give us a little more of like what you've worked on in the past? Yeah,
so some of our marquee projects, if you will, in the hospitality sector, We built a 37,000 square foot development down in Nashville, right on the heart of Lower Broadway at 4th and Broadway, epicenter of kind of the live music and entertainment district down there. It was a little small L-shaped parking lot, and over the course of about 3.5 years, we built that ground up to be 5 stories tall with a basement, 3 stages, like I mentioned, 37,000 square feet in partnership with John Bon Jovi, which has been a tremendous experience for us. So that's a live music, bar, restaurant, venue, and Bon Jovi has been a phenomenal partner and has joined us down there a bunch at this point to perform, to hang out, to bartend, and just to kind of be immersed in Music City. So that's been an unbelievable project to be a part of. And similarly to that on the hospitality side, not a ground-up development and not necessarily a real estate play, but also a different hospitality concept we have on Broadway's in partnership with Hank Williams Jr., a country artist. And so that's more traditional honky-tonk style rather than rock and roll music venue. Okay. But that's also been super awesome and really learn a lot through the operational processes that happen on the hospitality side, from food and beverage ordering, entertainment coordination, live music performances, private parties, kind of all of that in the epicenter of Nashville. So those have kind of been our 2 marquee hospitality projects. And then on the venture side, I mentioned this film company that we've recently partnered up with called 10 Live Studios, which is an unbelievable film production company that's moving their headquarters from Los Angeles to Nashville. Their CEO is a 7-time Emmy Award-winning producer who's a dear friend of ours, and they focus primarily on live music documentaries, so anything from Alicia Keys to Peter Frampton to the Hollywood Vampires with Johnny Depp and Alice Cooper. They put together beautiful live music documentaries about them. But then they also have a social impact and mission-driven component where they do a lot of docuseries work. They're working on anti-hazing campaigns. They're working on some dog meat stories actually over in Korea, and it allows them to kind of run the gamut on the festival circuit and make really cool deals with Hulu, HBO, Netflix, and things like that. So that's something we're really excited about. And then our professional sports project is also another marquee venture of ours. So that's with Milk and Honey Sports. They're a great sports agency out of Los Angeles. Their founder is also the head of Milk and Honey, which is actually a music management company for DJs, songwriters, and producers. And we have an NFL and an MLB agency with them. So we rep a bunch of different athletes, Travis Kelce being, I guess, the biggest player, you could say, in addition to Cortland Sutton and Paris Johnson and and Cam Curl, a bunch of other really great athletes. So those are a couple of our big projects that we're focused on, and super excited to continue working with them.
Yeah, I mean, I want to just backtrack a little bit because there's been a lot of names that are very prominent in a lot of these industries.
Yeah.
Can you take me back, and this could be more towards just business in general, but how do you come across partnering with these high-level people? How do you network with them? What does that look like?
So that's actually something that we're continuing to learn every day. I think one of the greatest things that my parents did, and all the credit in the world to them, in 2019, they bought a home in Nashville before the pandemic even hit as a second house because they loved the city down there. They wanted to start going down there a bit more. And as they were going down there starting in 2019, they just started setting up completely random cold call meetings with people specifically focused on real estate at first, because that's what brought them down there from my dad's professional real estate career. But also kudos to the city of Nashville. They're not very big into gatekeeping relationships, which is amazing. They really try to open a lot of doors for as many people as possible and foster an entrepreneurial spirit to kind of anyone who wants to take advantage of it. And so my parents just started taking a ton of meetings down there. And then as my sister and I started to go down there more, we would also take a ton of meetings. And I would go to a meeting at the same time my dad would go to a meeting at the same time my mom and my sister would, and we would kind of divide and conquer. And before we knew it, we just created this really intricate web of amazing people. And one thing that we have come to realize is, as crazy and far-fetched as that world seems, whether it be professional sports or Hollywood or music and entertainment, everything is really like 1 degree apart. If you know someone somewhere, they're not that far removed from someone else. And so we just kind of started talking to people. And above all else, I mean, somebody can open a door for you, but you have to be a good person to earn the relationship. And so we take our relationship cultivation super seriously. And that's just kind of how we've organically met people. It's never really been a fan letter to someone or something. It's really been just, our family has been super true, down to earth, and organic and trying to meet people, and it has proven to be really great. And everyone we work with is phenomenal. Like, they're all excellent human beings, and yeah, that's just kind of how we've gotten there. I know it's vague, but that's kind of the truth.
That I feel like is very true for a lot of industries. Like, just having that good relationship with your clientele leads to referrals. I mean, that is what kind of ties into our industry as well,
very much so.
In the finance realm, but kind of same deal with a lot of other companies. So it's interesting to hear from a different industry and multiple industries.
Yeah, very much so.
So transitioning a little bit,
yeah,
what would you say is probably the hardest thing about what you do? You touched on the difficulties, but what do you think is the most challenging?
I think the most challenging is a couple different things. So as a family office, especially one where all members of the family are involved, I would say this is kind of a two-pronged answer. So it's a first-generation family office. So because it's a first-generation family office, more often than not, the entire family is involved. It's not like we're on the fourth or fifth generation and a bunch of people have started to kind of step away and do their own thing. So with it being a first-generation family office, it is a blessing and a curse that you kind of have no manual, no guidebook. You're completely making it up as you go, to be honest. You know the things that your family loves, the things they're passionate about. We know how to do business. We always try to seek a really high return on our investment, and we always try to partner with really great people. Those are our ethos and our core values, but there's no direction. So more often than not, you are making educated guesses. You're diligencing a lot, but it's not like you're following a precedent of the 2 or 3 generations in your family office who have done it before you. So there's definitely a lot larger of room for error. You grow from it, but there's definitely larger room for error. And then I would say second to that, because it is a first generation family office and all of the family members are involved, it's very hard to kind of put that separation between work and life. And it's very challenging to pick up the phone and call your mom and just catch up with your mom as your mom and not as your business partner. And that's something that at first was really, really, really hard for us because my family is incredibly close. And we have tried to make very concerted efforts to mitigate that as much as possible, where if we're on a family vacation, we try to not talk about work as much as we possibly can. We've tried to do things where Mondays at 10 p.m. we have a dedicated Zoom of just the 4 of us, and that's the time that we talk about work. So if I call my dad later in the day, I can ask how he's doing and not ask about a million other work-related questions, but it's never perfect. And so it definitely has caused just a blurred barrier between what you talk about at Thanksgiving dinner as a family and what you talk about at Thanksgiving dinner as a boardroom. And so I would say those are 2 of the biggest challenges. Yeah, I can't say because I don't run a family office, but I can only imagine that becomes a challenge at some point. It does. And it's just also, it's a blessing and a curse also because you can you're most comfortable with your family, but it's also that sometimes as business professionals, you don't always see eye to eye. And so then it's also walking the fine line to make sure it's not like you could just turn off your phone if your boss at work is bothering you and it's the end of the workday at 5 p.m. If you have family dinner at 7:30 and you and your parents had an altercation at work, there's not as much of a break.
There's a lot of gray area.
Yeah.
Now, kind of transitioning again.
Yeah, of course.
So when you guys are looking into the investment space for venture capital and maybe partnering with someone, what are you looking for? What qualities are you looking for in someone to partner with?
So we always say number 1 is good people. There's a fine line between taking money that's good money and taking money that's bad money, or working with good money and working with bad money. Not all money is good money. And so that's definitely our first and foremost bit of criteria when we're looking for founders or partners or clients or really anyone that we would have an interpersonal relationship with in any capacity is that they have to check the box of being a good person. So we try really hard to establish foundational relationships with people well before we get into business with them. Just to see, I always say, and I know I've used it a couple times, but if we would have you at Thanksgiving dinner, we'll probably do business with you. If you're not someone that we want you to meet our grandma, we probably won't. And so that's first. Second, I would say, obviously it has to have a strong perspective for a return on an investment. It has to be someone, more often than not for us, we really infrequently come in as passive investors or passive partners. So when we're looking for partners or founders that we're going to invest in, we really want to find people who are also open to us having a seat at the table and helping to grow and scale their business or our business collectively in a way that will be mutually beneficial for everyone involved. We don't want to take control of it, but we also don't want to just throw money at it and them never hear from us again. And so we kind of want to find a partner who's open to a little bit of both. That's something that's really important to us. And then also, it has, more often than not for us, we try to pursue founders or companies or investment opportunities that we feel we can be accretive to and have a little bit of industry expertise in, just because we want our founders to feel like they can call on us as well if they have a question or just want to run something by us or have or looking for advice. And so we really want it, I know I mentioned it, but we want it to be super interpersonal. We want it to be very relatable, and we want it to be a very comfortable environment that we're all working towards the same goal to obtain really high ROI. And ultimately, if we can grow and scale a company to a point of exit, that's a dream for everybody. But it has to be working on great people, things that we're passionate about, and all working towards making the business better.
Yeah, and we kind of run into kind of the back half of the exit planning part is when someone's planning for that. So we come in, help them make sure they're prepared for that, because a lot of people don't realize that once they exit a business, that's like their baby as one way to put it. But you end up exiting and then you kind of run out of things to do or don't have the same passions. And they don't realize that. So it has to make sense, and it has to be really well thought out when you go to exit or even just plan.
Very much so. M&A advisory work is something that we have found ourselves to be very accretive in, because our chief investment officer has been a part of a couple companies who have scaled and sold, and my dad is a former co-founder of a company who sold for a very large multiple that allowed us to do our family office. And his specifically was really unique because his was in the cannabis space. It was the largest cannabis M&A transaction in history. It's a very regulated industry, very cash-strapped industry, and so it provided a ton of M&A insight for him in a market that's so regulated, and there's no banking or very little banking assistance. And so, so it kind of provided us to be equipped to help our portfolio companies, obviously not every single step of the way, because there are things that pop up that we might not know about where we bring in people like yourselves, but as much as we can through an M&A process to really serve as a sounding board and a solid advisor to them.
For sure. Now, since you're a business owner, your family has started a business multiple times, what advice would you have for someone starting their business today?
I would say the best piece of advice I've ever received is to really start putting together your personal board of directors. And what that means to me, and how it was explained to me, is you don't need to be a company that has a full board of directors or a board of advisors. Every individual person, especially if they have an entrepreneurial spirit who plan to go and start their own business, should really be intentional about the relationships they create and aware of the relationships that they have and the backgrounds that each of those individual people have, so that when they are in a position where they need to call on somebody, they can have in their own back pocket a board of directors, if you will, like the best person you know for finance, the best person you know for marketing. And it's those relationships who have more industry expertise, knowledge, and relationships than you might have in that respective field that will help you get there, especially if they're solid relationships. And so that's something that to me has always resonated, and I make a conscious effort to do continuously, and it's never complete. That's the other thing, is that your board should never be final. Every person you meet, you should think about how much does this person know about X, Y, and Z, and if I ever have a question about it, they would be a great person for me to call and pick their brain. And I just think that knowledge is power and relationships are power, and the more you can combine those two to really help you get to a point that you want to be at is all the difference in the world.
Yeah, it's the old, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Of course.
And so I really like that, building your own board of directors.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Now to kind of wrap things up,
Of course.
Who is Sydni outside of work?
Oh, that's a great question. Sydni outside of work. Sydni loves to travel. Absolutely love it. My biggest bucket list item is to make it to all 7 continents in my life. I've made it to 3, so we have a little bit of ways to go, but we will get there. Absolutely love that. I love to cook a lot. I have found cooking in my adult life. It was never something that I grew up with. My parents didn't really cook. I didn't really cook in college, but I found it to be super therapeutic, and I think that comes back to the foodie in me and loving the hospitality experience. So I love that, and exercise and like walking outdoors is something that I absolutely love. And music, that's the last thing. So if there's a concert in town of somebody that I love, 9 times out of 10 I'll be there. I absolutely love it. And so yeah, just building great relationships with people around food and experiences and music and travel is something that I've always loved, which I think at my core is probably why the events world was so interesting to me, because it always kind of included some part of that. And then I'm a sister, and that's like my I didn't even get to talk about my sister very much, but that's honestly the best role in my life that I play. I'm a big sister, and I think that that was definitely one of the biggest purposes I have on earth, is to be a big sister. My younger sister is my best friend and the greatest in the world, and she gives me a lot of purpose to be a good role model and go out and do good. So that's kind of who I am outside of work.
Well, Sydni, it's great to have you. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and we'd be happy to have you back at any time.
Thank you so much. I loved being here. I'd be happy to come back whenever you need me.